Welcome to Sentient Rights Ireland seminar series. It's my great pleasure to introduce the guest speaker today, who is Ronnie Lee. Ronnie went vegan in 1972, and he's probably most famous for co-founding first the Band of Mercy and then the Animal Liberation Front. And now he's involved in vegan education and indeed in encouraging vegan education. So over to you, Ronnie.
Oh, thanks, Roger, and thanks everyone who's taking part. It's a great pleasure to be able to speak tonight, especially as I'm actually an Irish citizen. My mum was Irish, which makes me an Irish citizen, so I do have a strong connection with Ireland. So it's great to be speaking to you all. Yes, how do we achieve animal liberation? That's not at all a difficult question, is it? But I think it can be achieved if we go about it the right way. First of all, though, I think we've got to kind of ask what we mean by animal liberation, and for me, and I'm sure for all of you, you know, the animal liberation would be a widespread situation where non-human animals are freed from the oppression and exploitation imposed on them by humans. And of course, that oppression and exploitation takes very many forms. Probably in terms of the number of animals that are made to suffer and are killed by humans. The biggest area where that takes place would be the food industry. We have a situation throughout the world where 50,000 other animals every second are killed by the food industry in the process of feeding humans. And of course, you know, that is something that's kind of totally unnecessary, because of course we could all easily and healthily live on a vegan diet. And then I think coming probably a close second to that in terms of the number of animals would be adverse human impact on the environment. That's often an area I think that can be kind of ignored by vegans and animal rights campaigners, but it's a huge area of the oppression of other animals. For instance, like the climate crisis that's caused by humans. The fires in Australia, there's been a recent report that has come to the conclusion that those fires wiped out 3 billion other animals, 3 billion free living beings, wild animals. And that's just one example of the catastrophic effect of the climate crisis on other animals. And then there's all the other ways in which humans adversely impact on the environment through pollution, through overpopulation, industrialization, the killing of animals caused by our transportation systems, etc., and the list goes on. And then we have animal experimentation. The number of animals that suffer and die because of animal experiments worldwide is probably about 200 million. And then we have hunting, we have zoos and circuses, animal racing, the fur trade. The list goes on, and it's a horrific edifice of oppression and exploitation. And it can seem something it's almost impossible to topple that, to actually change the situation. But as I'll be exploring with you, I think it is possible to do that. So and we have to, in order to do that, we have to ask ourselves, why do this situation exist? Where's the fundamental reason why other animals are oppressed by humans? And that reason, I would say, obviously, is speciesism or human supremacism. The illogical, irrational, immoral, unethical view that humans are somehow more important than other animals. And that's the fundamental reason why other animals are oppressed by humans. And so we have to challenge that. If ever we're to to achieve animal liberation, we have to properly challenge speciesism and human supremacism, because in a world where the vast majority of people are speciesists, where the vast majority of humans are supremacists in their attitudes towards other animals, we're never going to change never going to achieve animal liberation. So how do we go about challenging this cultural speciesism? Well, for me, the obvious way to do that is through vegan education. Through vegan education, not just in terms of vegan diet, but education in terms of challenging the whole concept of speciesism. So it's vitally important that we have as much vegan education as possible, not just in terms of changing the way that people behave as consumers. And obviously, the more people who switch from practices that contribute to the oppression of other animals to doing things in a way that doesn't oppress other animals, the better. And obviously, the main area where ordinary people contribute to the oppression of other animals is through their diet, through consuming animal products. So if we can educate a large number of people to switch to a vegan diet, then obviously that will make a really big impact in terms of those people as consumers. But it's not just to do with lifestyle, it's also to do with politics, because all the time and throughout the world, we have governments, we have administrations that actually favour the oppression of other animals, that promote and subsidise the oppression of other animals, and it will take strong measures against anyone that opposes it, especially if those people start to become effective in that opposition. So we have to change things politically, and once again, vegan education is really important for that, because if we can, the more people we educate to become vegan, the more vegan politicians we'll have, because obviously some of those people want to be politicians, and the more vegans we'll have to vote for those politicians. So that eventually we can change the whole nature of the administration, so that we have a vegan-run administration that will not only promote a vegan diet, but will also put an end to all these other areas of the oppression of other animals. That will properly ban hunting, will end animal experimentation, will end animal racing, and all these ways in which other animals are exploited and oppressed. Measures can be taken against those things. So we need to talk about, well, okay, so we need all this widespread vegan education, but how are we going to bring that about? I mean, obviously, vegan outreach does occur at the moment, but what tends to happen is that it takes place almost always in the centre of big cities. There are people doing activities such as the Cube of Truth, Earthlings Experience, other actions in the centre of big cities to educate people to go vegan, and that's great. It's wonderful that people are doing that, but it's obviously not nearly enough, because what about all the other places where no outreach takes place? The suburbs of cities, the smaller cities, the towns, even the villages where people live, non-vegans live in all these places, and yet hardly any outreach takes place there. So what we need to do is to be able to spread vegan outreach everywhere. And in order to do that, we obviously need a lot more vegans to become active in vegan education. We have a situation now, really throughout the world, where there are many more people than ever before who would describe themselves as vegans. But the problem is that only a tiny percentage of those people are actually active in promoting veganism, are actually active in educating others to become vegan. And we urgently need to change that if we are going to have widespread vegan education. So it's really important that all vegans become active, or as many vegans as possible become active in outreach. But also, and something that's probably even more important, is that we need more vegans to be instigators and organisers of outreach in their local area. So basically, we need a situation where a lot more non-active vegans become active, but we need a lot more active vegans to become more than just activists. We need those people to become organisers and instigators of outreach, to encourage others to become active in vegan education in their local areas. And there's obviously different ways in which that education can take place. There's a lot that can be done. People can do a lot of vegan outreach just in their everyday lives as they go about their everyday lives. I mean, something I do, I always have leaflets on me promoting veganism, and I leave them on public transport. I leave them in waiting rooms. I leave them in public places. I put them inside relevant magazines in supermarkets, in books, in libraries, and so on. I put them under the windscreen wipers of cars, especially if there's a sticker on that car that indicates that person cares about some animals. Perhaps somebody's got a dog rescue sticker on their car, something like that. I'll put a leaflet under their windscreen wipers. So, and we can all do this as we go about our everyday lives. We can always, spread the vegan message as we go. So that's one way of doing it. And we can do that. We can do that just as individuals, just on our own. And another thing I often do just by myself is door dropping and delivering leaflets through letterboxes of houses. If I've got half an hour to spare, I'll say, right, okay, I'll deliver these leaflets. And that's another thing that virtually all vegans can do just on their own. But if there's a small group, because the situation is there are vegans everywhere, and what we need is are people who will mobilise the other vegans, try to mobilise the other vegans in their local area to get those people active as well. Because if there are a small group of you can do a lot more. For instance, it's easier to do information stalls, especially if you're giving away food samples. You obviously need more than one person to properly be able to do that. But just a small group of people in a local area can achieve a lot. I mean, locally, my local vegan group, we do a lot of stalls at community events, at kind of health events, at local carnivals, at local family fun days, at environmental events. So it's not always just in the street. It's at these community events as well, which can be either indoors or in the summer. For instance, we'll do information stalls at dog rescue fundraising events, which are very often held in a local park. So there's all these opportunities for outreach in a local area, and we need to do a lot more of that if we're going to educate enough people to become vegan. Because I believe that if we can get enough vegans becoming active, and we can get enough of the active vegans to become instigators and organisers of outreach, especially in their local areas, we can achieve animal liberation.